So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is. You just kind of adapt and overcome.
Happy New Year, my friends. I am so glad to see 2020 get kicked out of the door and to start fresh. I know we are still in for some uphill battles in the new year, but it just sounds so good to say goodbye 2020. I just wanted to let all of you know that usually you get to hear my baby Lewis, my kitty, my orange cat in the background. And he makes his presence known quite frequently, but unfortunately, he became very ill, and I had to put him to sleep this week. And so it's been a tough week, losing my baby of 16 years. So God bless him, and I'm so glad that you got to hear him annoy me in the background. But anyway, so, it's been interesting, but I hope all of you had a wonderful holiday, and I wish you the very, very best for a new year. And now I'm going to bring on somebody who's been on my show a few times, and somebody who happens to be one of my very dear friends, Mr. Greg Bishop. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I'm sorry about your poor kitty. I went through that a couple of years ago. It is not fun.
Well, you sound like you're a million miles away.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Oh, did it go back to
Now that sounds good, but
Oh, okay. Huh. Weird. Maybe I should just keep the computer in front of me. I'll do that for now.
Yeah, whatever. Tomato.
It's probably because I was walking through the bathroom closing windows because it's getting cold.
Well, and I appreciate you taking time away from your family to, it looked like you were having such a wonderful feast, but to hang out with me and talk about, kind of the year, 2020. What are your thoughts on 2020, just in general?
It sucked.
Okay.
That makes me no different than 99.99. Everybody, actually. Everybody had a bad year. Not even, I don't know, I guess Biden and Harris didn't, but still, everybody basically had a shitty year. So, can I say that? Sorry.
Yeah, whatever. You can say whatever you want.
All right. Well, I usually say whatever I want, but I also have Radiohead, speaking head, and I have podcast speaking head, and podcast speaking head I tend to swear a little bit more.
Ooh.
So, but I have a good wall in between because I've been doing this for so long. It's like I almost never swear on my show, not because I think it's wrong. It's because I only do it to emphasize something. So when I do use foul language, it means I must really be upset or excited about something.
Yeah.
Other than that, I kind of leave it off because I think it's used a lot more effectively when it's used surgically.
Strategically, yeah, I agree.
Strategically.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2020 for most reasons was terrible. I didn't have a really nice end of 2019.
I know. Going
into 2020 wasn't very fun either. And then suddenly, I went to see Miguel Red Pill Junkie in Mexico, and then after that, everything just went in the toilet for everything. And I don't know. It kind of shut everything down. In the way that 9/11 shut all the paranormal and UFO stuff down, I think that 2020 did too. Especially towards the end of the year here, where everything just kind of, the only people talking about it anymore were the people that were really into it, like you and I and the people that we know. including people who we agree and don't agree with, and all that. And so, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think that the people that have been into this for many years can see patterns repeating themselves. Whether they're true or not, it's just the way I think about things. I mean, I can see patterns repeating themselves, not in the exact same way, but, suspicions go through my mind, elation goes through my mind, disappointment goes through my mind, all these things. And a heavy dose of, don't you realize this happened before? Like somebody will come online and say, what did they, I can't remember what case they were talking about. Some really classic case, like Kelly Hopkinsville or something. Oh my God, guys, did you realize that this happened? It's like, Jesus. I can understand just coming on it for the first time, but then you look at it and it's a revelation to somebody.
Well,
and I don't want to be a hipster
somewhere.
going, oh yeah, I was into that before you. It has nothing to do with that. But the thing is, sometimes the attitude, like, some people say, we know everything, and we don't, and you don't know how things are. And it's like, no, people that have been around a while, they kind of do know how things are. And I don't make it a point to argue with anybody about it, because it's not really worth it. I just kind of sit and watch the show. And also, I posted something on my Facebook timeline the other day. It was the symbol Mushin, which is a Japanese term which means no mind. And the reason I posted it was actually because, one, because it's just a good philosophy to live by, where you don't let things affect you too much. You try and be more, I don't know about complacent, but you try to be less emotionally involved in things, and to look at them as objectively, if that's even possible, as you can. And that way you don't get pulled by somebody's exciting new case, some new insight that isn't really a new insight. It's just an insight that's been around for a long time, told in a different way. All these things. Like when Deep Prasad came up, and a lot of people I know are like, who is this upstart? Who is this? Who does he think he is? And I was thinking, the guy's just getting started. Give him a break here. And I actually had him on my show, and we had a very nice talk. Whatever you think of him, I liked him as a person, and I liked talking to him.
Well, that's good. He's kind of, is he still doing anything?
No, he kind of backed off of it.
I just don't pay attention to that whole scene.
I think there was some mutual issues between them, which I'm not even sure what they were, honestly. And he is backed off and is, working on his own stuff. And the people he was with, what was it, UAP Expeditions, they're working on their own stuff. I don't know how much their ocean cruise, I say cruise, their ocean expedition things. I don't know how much it got pushed back by COVID, but I'm 100% for that thing. I mean, people were saying, what do they think they're going to find? Oh, they're so naive. It's like, you're sitting behind your computer typing away and getting mad at somebody. What are you doing? So, any time anybody can go out and do something actively in this field and form their own group and do something, I don't know whether it's constructive, useful, or anything, but it's something. It's something different, and something will come out of it. It's either, nothing happened and we're not going to do that again, or, wow, look at all this data and all these insights we got. I have a feeling it'd be somewhere in the middle there, probably closer to the nothing happened.
Right.
But they could get lucky, and I think that'd be great. And the best thing they could do would be to share that with everyone.
Now, who's involved in that organization?
Oh, God. Let's see. Kevin Knuth. I think Kevin Day. I think he resigned, though. Kevin Day didn't. Rizwan Verk, I believe. Who else? I think they're using some of Chris O'Brien's San Luis Valley, the tracking software that he has. Wow, I can't even remember. Deep Prasad was involved, but then they parted ways. Wow, who else? Bruce Maccabee, of all people.
Oh, that's...
He's a consultant, and Preston Dennett is also a consultant because that's his area there down off the Southern California coast.
So Maccabee, Mr. CIA.
Well, naval intelligence at least, or he was in the Navy. I don't know if he was naval intelligence or he had an intelligence connection. I think they just have him on kind of as a consultant, one, because of the ocean thing, and two, because he's been around forever. Whether you CIA even tar him with the CIA brush or not, if somebody's there and they can offer their experience, I think, I don't see any problem with it. And I don't think he's going to try and steer them in any direction that the government wants. I mean, I don't think there's any government involvement at all, except possibly just to see what, sit back and see what happens.
How old is he now, Bruce Maccabee, do you think?
God, he must be in his 70s, late 70s at this point.
Yeah, I would think so.
He called into my show once when Bill Moore was on. That was pretty interesting.
Oh, I bet that was interesting.
Well, you know what? They just said, hi, how you doing? Hi, okay, hey, how you been? Hey, great, okay, nice, what you been doing? Okay, not much. Okay, talk to you later. I mean, that was basically, but the thing was, I had them both on at the same time, and I think I tried to start asking questions, but they were too busy talking to each other, and they hadn't spoken to each other in probably 10 or 15 years, and this was 10 or 15 years ago on my show.
Oh, interesting. I'd love to hear that. Can I find that on your website? Probably.
I'll have to gather all the Bill Moore stuff. And it was the most listened to shows that I've ever had was all the Bill Moore stuff, obviously. I had him on like 4 times, I think.
Wow.
And 4 or 5, and one of them had nothing to do with the UFOs. It was that who wrote the Book of Mormon book that he helped research and update.
Which book what book was that?
The Spalding Enigma, Who Really Wrote the Book of Mormon, was the name of the book. It was written in the 70s, I think. And the original authors, one of them was a relative of like a great-great-grandson of who was it? Oh my God! It was like a founding member of the Mormon Church. I can't remember which one.
Not Joseph Smith.
No. Wow, I can't remember his name. It was like the names were Vanek and I can't think of who the names of. I can look it up real quick. But anyway, it was a book about the beginnings of the Mormon Church, and Moore had actually driven around the country to different communities in Ohio and upstate New York and a few other places looking for old records on when the Mormons were living there, like in Kirtland, Ohio, and there was a couple other places. All the places that they'd gone to and gotten kicked out of, basically.
Yeah.
And as he did the research, he actually said he would call libraries and archives, and he would ask if they had certain materials. And, if they did, they say, oh, yeah, sure, right, come on down. He said a few times he'd show up at the library within a day or two, and they were all gone.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
he says he was pretty sure it's people from the Mormon Church were basically following him, making sure he didn't start digging up stuff that they didn't want seen, misinterpreted, interpreted properly. Who knows? But
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But he said that he really did sense that somebody was kind of trying to thwart him every once in a while.
Well, I can see why, but that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to read that book.
Yeah, it's called The Spalding Enigma, Who Really Wrote the Book of Mormon. There's a itinerant preacher in the early 19th century who was down on his luck. He wanted to support his family. He thought he'd write a book. So he wrote a book about how that one of the lost 12 tribes of Israel moved to the United States, and they became integrated into the culture, and that Jesus came here. And all the stuff that basically came out in the Book of Mormon, he said this guy had written in this fictional book in the 18 teens sometime.
Well, that's always got to be awkward.
Yeah. And nobody's ever been able to find the actual manuscript, but there's talk of it and writing about it, and who names associated with it, and who read the manuscript and what was in the manuscript, and
How fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
There it is. Sidney Rigdon was
Okay, that's right. Okay.
I think that's one of the. I think was Rigdon one of the. Huh. Yeah. I think one of the authors were actually related to Rigdon.
Interesting. Well, it's also fascinating, and especially for me, since I live here, we're the center of all things LDS. So.
Yeah.
Very
well, I thought you'd be interested, and I
cool.
had mentioned that book to you before, and I had him on the show once with all of the authors. All three authors plus more who did the extra research and a lot of the he expanded the book from it wasn't Rigdon, it was Cowdery. That was one of the names of the people that was actually an old who was Wayne Cowdery, Howard Davis and Donald Scales, and then Bill helped them do a new version of it in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I guess. And I had them on my show, and they talked about it for 2 hours. The actual authors of the book and Bill Moore.
Oh, that would be fascinating. And there was also another book written by Peter Levenda about the Mormon Church, which I find fascinating. Did you ever read that?
No.
Huh. Yeah, I need to. It's been a long time since I've read that, but I need to pull that out again for multiple reasons. It's quite interesting, to say the least. And I have to just ask you really quickly, because I've got a person in chat.
I know that Valet likes Levenda's work.
You know that Valet likes
or said he did.
Huh.
He said that when at the beginning of the. At least I think he did. I hope I'm not misquoting him. When it was found out that he was writing the book with Tom DeLonge, one of the first Secret Machines books. I think Levenda co-authored the book with one of those books with him, and I think people were saying that Valet was involved with TTSA, and he said, "No, I'm not. I'm not even involved with them at all. But I do admire some of Peter Levenda's work." That's all I remember him saying.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. So I have to ask you a question.
What was the chat?
So Peter wants me to ask you if you have learned anything new about the Benowitz case.
Nothing earth-shaking except for that Chris Lambright disagrees heavily with me about when Benowitz was contacted first. I thought he was contacted first when he wrote to Leo Sprinkle and had him come out and check out this poor lady, Myrna Hansen, and that was the first that he exhibited any signs of being sort of paranoid and sort of going down the rabbit hole. Chris said he had specific evidence that he had contact with intelligence and Air Force before that, so that it changes my narrative a bit as to when he started to sort of go around the bend about the UFO subject. And there's some merit to what he said, but I didn't have those sources when I was doing the book. So there's a question there as to when Benowitz first had contact with the Air Force and intelligence, and it might not have been when he was called down to the base to give that briefing that he gave to say that he was seeing things flying around the base, and I don't think he was picking up signals as yet.
And so
later he did. So there's kind of there's contentious bit of history there, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm totally open to what Chris might say.
And Chris,
And he said some of it on my show, actually.
right? And he wrote the book X Descending. He's been on my show too, and so it is interesting to listen to him. He's done a lot of very thorough research and over the years. And so for people that are not familiar with Paul Benowitz and his really sad story, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown?
Okay, I'm trying to. I've been asked this hundreds of times.
I know.
How to do it most efficiently. Bearing in mind what I just said, in the mid 1980s, this guy Paul Benowitz had a company that produced temperature and humidity measuring instruments. At least that's what they do now. I think they did some other kind of instruments too, on government contracts. He lived in New Mexico. I think he had earned a master's in electrical engineering and electrical physics. But he's also a UFO researcher. He saw lights flying around the Air Force Base, which he could see from his house. I've been not to in his house, but I've been to the address and seen his view. He looked out over most of the northern part of Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, and he saw lights going up in the air and whizzing around, not like UFOs really, but in kind of a non-aircraft-like way, and going behind this mountain and disappearing. And he saw this night after night in the winter in 1977 or something like that, 6, 7. He started making films, 8mm films of it. He could see people shining flashlights around the bottoms of them before the things like glowed and went up in the air. So he called the Air Force and he said, there's something going on here at your base you ought to know about. I think it's UFOs, because there were some UFO sightings there recently before that. I don't think he knew about those, though. Those are in the record. I don't know if they're true, actual sightings. I'm pretty sure they are based on what I found by the military around a military base with nuclear weapons, which is what Kirtland was. He contacted the Air Force. He said he was seeing these things. They said, come on in and tell us about it, because they didn't think they were UFOs. They might have thought there were, but they already had reports. But they wanted to know what he was seeing. You know, if somebody's watching us at 3 a.m, when it's 10 degrees below zero in the middle of the winter, we want to know what's going on there. Because usually they kind of did this way out in the open, because like, who the hell's going to be up at 3 a.m. when it's below freezing outside, right near the base. Anyway, they called him in. He reported on what he'd seen, and a couple people from the Air Force said, "Why don't you keep in touch with us and keep us up to date on what you see?" Because they wanted to know what he was seeing. Well, if he could see this, anybody else could. So, what are you seeing? What do you think it is? All that stuff, which is why they didn't tell him to just stop it. They want to know that a trained observer, basically, somebody that knows a little bit about technology, would be saying. Unfortunately, he was also very prone to taking leaps of logic on a lot of things, as we know from a lot of being around a lot of UFO people. And he somehow got it in his head, either through having the idea planted, which Chris Lambright might say, or that he just, to me, it was a combination of having very bad filtering and also having somebody encouraging him in that direction, somebody being intelligence services like the Air Force and NSA and other people that read the base doing projects. And through a combination of those things, he became more and more disturbed, paranoid. It started affecting his health. The whole Dulce base thing started because he got direction from somebody at the base, I think the head of security, AFOSI, to go up to this area in Dulce in a helicopter with the military, and they showed him things like, saying, "This is interesting, Paul. Why don't you take a look at this?" And what they told me is they're trying to draw his attention away from Kirtland. But a lot of probably most, if not all of the Dulce base rumors started just from the Air Force tried to direct Paul Benowitz's attention away from Kirtland. And, and he started flying up there in his own plane, and then I guess something like a stealth fighter or drone crashed there, and he happened to see it. He thought it was an alien ship, or they told him it was, that it crashed. And drew pictures of it and everything, but then somehow the photos and all the photos that he took disappeared from his house, but he was left with these drawings, which of course don't really prove anything. And eventually, the upshot of this all is that by 1983 or 4, something like that, his health and his mental health had deteriorated to the point where his family had him put in a mental health care facility for a while, like maybe a month or two. And when he came out, he kind of simmered down about it. He still talked to people, but it wasn't, he wasn't chain smoking anymore and losing sleep and all that stuff that he had before, as far as I know. And that's Paul Benowitz. There's so much more to the story.
There is, and you did such a great job, in Project Beta, talking about that and researching all of that. And I think the one thing that I find very fascinating is the fact that Hynek, you mentioned that Hynek was the one who brought him the computer.
Yeah, he was picking up signals, he said, and he was starting to decode them. And as far as I can tell from people I talked to, inference and all that, I never found out for sure because I couldn't find any record of it, at least not in time for the book release. That he was. Now I forgot what your question was. About what?
We're good. We're getting old, Craig.
That's okay. I got like 4 hours of sleep, so I'm running out of minutes here.
Yeah,
but
no. So I just the whole thing that there was this computer that was given.
Oh, the
to
computer.
Him. Yeah, and which there are lots of questions swirling around about that computer for multiple reasons, but that Hynek, allegedly was the person that was his last.
Yeah,
assignment,
allegedly,
right?
the only person that told me that was Bill Moore, and I said that in the book. I said that because Benowitz had gotten to the point where he was starting to decode these messages. What he was decoding was, we are from some planet and we need to, take over your planet and we need your women and all kinds of weird things. But the point was, I think that somebody that was doing this research figured out that he was figuring out how to break their codes, which was like, what? Because they'd spent, months or years and millions of dollars putting together these codes, which are probably microbursts, like to communicate with either spy satellites or missiles or something like that. Microbursts meaning, a whole bunch of information compressed into a tiny little bit of, instead of hearing a voice say something, you hear, brr! It's like, if you slow that all down, it turns into a whole bunch of data. And he was apparently figuring out how to decode that, which was worrisome. So, what Bill told me, and I've never been able to prove, but I would really like to find out. The Center for UFO Studies was completely not helpful with me trying to locate any information on this.
I bet they weren't. And I found that really, really interesting as well, because
I thought they were just lazy.
No, I think it's because my personal feeling, knowing a couple of things that they would have a vested interest in making sure that Hynek's reputation was not tarnished. And so I believe that they would probably go to pretty good lengths to make sure that information that could be potentially harmful to his beautiful image, that would be kept quiet. That's my guess.
I don't even know if I mentioned that. I just said, do you have any records pertaining to any interaction with Paul Benowitz in these years? So maybe I guess that did raise a red flag. I don't know. But what Bill told me is that Hynek showed up Benowitz told me that Hynek showed up at his door, and he knew it was Hynek. Everybody knew who Hynek was. Showed up at his door with his computer saying, here, Paul, the Air Force is giving you this computer. And he said he was, Benowitz had this assumption that he was working with the Air Force. That's what they told him. We want to work with you on solving this problem. But basically, they just wanted to keep tabs on him. And eventually it turned into, at least on a couple occasions, giving him disinformation that would confirm some of his prejudices and paranoia. But yeah, the computer supposedly delivered to him had, and this was what, 1980, maybe 1980, 81, 82. Nobody had computers, Erica. And if they did, they'd have to build them themselves, which he did. And you'd have to program them yourself. You couldn't just go buy software.
Right.
So he had painstakingly put together and built these computers and then created software that would decode this stuff. And so what I was told by Bill was that Hynek came to the door with a computer saying, look, here's a brand new one. The Air Force has put it together for you. You can use it to decode the messages. And, the thing had already been preloaded with stuff that would come out with messages they wanted to hear.
Who else do you
And
think?
then supposedly
Go ahead,
they
sorry.
set up across the NSA or somebody set up across the street in a vacant house and started beaming stuff straight into his antenna from the house across the street. So it was all compromised, and it just, so he wouldn't be listening to the telemetry anymore. He would just be listening to the stuff that was being sent to him. This is what I was told. I was never able to find any records about it. I was told this by people on the inside, and then other people on the not in the government, other UFO researchers. Gabe Valdez, the New Mexico State Highway Patrolman, would tell me, yeah, he was excited that he had this computer program. I don't know if Gabe specifically told me, but he did tell me that he went in there and saw stuff showing up on his computer screen that looked like vague shapes of alien or of insectoid heads or something. And Paul was really excited about this. Wow. And this was in the early 80s, for Christ's sake.
Who else do you think was involved in this? I mean, and because, obviously Hynek is friends with, or was associates and friends with Valet. I mean, have you ever heard about any potential involvement with this with regard to Valet?
I've heard accusations. I haven't heard anybody actually say anything concrete about it.
Interesting. Well, it's also interesting. I don't know. I don't know. The more I look at the whole thing, I mean, just think of how much money it cost to put on something like that.
Yeah, but the protecting something that's cost multi-millions of dollars.
Right.
That's I don't agree. I've done this lecture a long time, and people get mad at me. It's well, don't you see how wrong this was? Yes, of course I see how wrong it was. And I could see what was going on, and I could see what they're trying to do, but I also see that I'm trying to tell you what happened, not wag a finger and tell you how to feel. That's something that always annoyed me. People say, "Well, aren't you upset about this?" It's I am upset about it. Why didn't you say so in the book? I'm supposed to tell you how to feel about something that's wrong? What are you, children? Of course it was wrong. I'm reporting to you about, when somebody interviews a mass murderer, do they have to tell you that he's a bad person? No. So that's kind of how I felt about this. I was trying to report what I heard and report what I'd found and put it into a format that had a narrative, as much of a narrative structure to it so that you could sort of piece together what the story was in the way that I was trying to piece it together.
It's just so interesting. I mean, the whole thing. And you mentioned that they flew him over a place where there was a supposed crash saucer and things. And it, when you say that, it brings...
No, he found that later. They flew him over a part of the Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, and actually, I was told, they put props there that weren't, some Jeeps and water tanks and stuff to make him believe there was some kind of base there, and he, that there wasn't, or if there was, it wasn't in the place he was shown, and it was just basically a misdirection of attention. And yeah, that is a lot of money and effort, but
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's definitely.
I don't think they do such things anymore, but if they do, it's far easier. You just do it on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. But it's interesting because, we know people, and we've heard stories of people being taken to places where there were crash saucers. And I wonder if this, if there isn't the same group maybe at work with regard to that.
I wouldn't think so, but I do not know. This was just a group of people in the Air Force and in Air Force intelligence and a couple other intelligence agencies at the time. And I don't think it's all the people that we might want to point the finger at. I think it's mostly people, Ernest Edwards, who was the head of AFOSI at the time, and God, I can't think of the other people. It's been so long since I wrote the book, but all the people that are involved in the book that people know about now, about the aviary, they didn't have anything to do with Benowitz. They were a separate thing. They had nothing to do with the Benowitz thing. I don't know how I can emphasize that to people enough. As far as I know, they weren't involved with doing anything with Benowitz. They were involved with, Puthoff and John Alexander and who else was in there? I can't remember. Kit Green, Doty, the Sky Falcon, and this was a tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of a big, giant intelligence operation. And people in the OO community don't really want to realize that. As Bill told me, and I totally agree with him on this, it makes sense to me in light of everything else I've learned and all the people I've talked to. The Benowitz thing and what UFO researchers know as that period of history and that involvement with the government was basically less than 5% of an entire intelligence operation. The intelligence operation was huge. The Benowitz thing was just a tiny ass little one sentence of this giant book. And since we're interested in the subject, we're kind of like, oh, they were all interested in UFOs. Like, no, they were just interested in keeping a lid on projects that were going on at Kirtland at the time and a few other places, I guess.
So, I mean, honestly, if they were willing to go to this length, to try to dissuade people or discourage people from looking at what was going on or understanding what they were really doing, I mean, I think we would be absolutely foolish to not think that there wouldn't be people who would be, involved in the ufology community trying to do the same thing, trying to push things away from where they're going. And I don't think that that's because it is extraterrestrial. I think it's because they're trying to keep a lid on certain projects that are taking place.
Yes, and everybody can get mad at me right now because I don't think there's any problem with keeping lids on projects that are going on. In a lot of ways, it goes beyond the bounds of being ethical about an American citizen. Yeah, then I have a problem with that. But I don't have a problem with keeping secrets about weapons systems as long as they're being developed, because either stop making the weapons and just bury your underbelly and just let somebody else take over, or develop these systems and keep ahead of the curve. Until that situation doesn't exist in the world, we got to live with it.
Right.
And I'm not a hawk. I'm not a right winger. To me, it's just kind of common sense. If you let your enemy know what you're doing, then it's kind of a huge waste of money, time, and probably dangerous.
Absolutely. But
I draw the line at like something that happened to Benowitz, where you take an American citizen and you keep them in the dark at any cost to cover. I mean, there were so many other ways they could have done this. Yes, so many other ways, but they chose to do it this way.
Pull them in there and scare the hell out of them and say, keep your mouth shut.
Because they thought it would be more efficacious to find out who he knew, how he knew those people, what those people knew, and just basically find out a network. Even if Benowitz had no idea the network was there. Because he was talking to UFO researchers that they knew were not UFO researchers from other countries. They were people that were trying to get military secrets through Benowitz. Unfortunately, he got caught in the middle, and unfortunately, they didn't, the powers that be really didn't care what was happening to him as long as they could keep a lid on things. And that to me crosses the line into being ethically wrong. But just keeping a military secret, I don't have any problem with that at all. Not in the least.
Absolutely. So Peter wanted me to bring up Anthony Sanchez, who supposedly investigated Dulce and found strange hardware and had serious health effects. Have you heard anything about that?
I have. I don't know if anything ever came of it. And also I heard that some of his story fell apart, but I'm not going to address it because I'd have to be specific. And I don't want to mansplain something I don't know anything about.
Well, that's very nice of you. I appreciat your honesty.
Nah. Well, I heard that that story fell apart in some ways. Maybe somebody can educate me, but I mean the whole Dulce thing. I think if there was something there, and you know what, I think there probably was something there. There was just too much going on there. But I don't think it had anything to do with aliens or deals with extraterrestrial civilizations or big fights in underground bases or anything like that. Right. I really, really don't think that any of that's went on. I do think there's really good likelihood there was some sort of facility there. But past that, I don't exactly know what was going on. It certainly isn't what people talk about. If something is leaked out into the public, especially about a military thing or something that's supposed to be secret, I don't think anybody without a clearance is going to get anywhere near the truth of it. And when somebody comes to a researcher or a journalist or whatever and says, I've got the real story for you, but you just follow me, it's like automatically the person should be suspicious.
You're right.
You know?
And you know, this brings me
and
to...
not get a huge boner like, oh, they're telling me and I'm special. It's like, no, that's invariably
the B
what's
word.
happened. Sorry. Well, I think we can say boner.
That's, I'm just kidding. Just laughing.
It's a good word.
It is. It's no comments. No comment from the Peanut Gallery. Anyway, on that note, so you have, because you know in your life you've been in this game for a long time, and you've obviously heard, and you're friends with Bill Moore, and he had a very interesting experience with people and trying to get involved in all of this, and he ended up doing things, from what it sounds like, from what you have said, that he did not really want to do. When he was asked to collect information on specific researchers, did you ever find out what specific researchers he was asked to keep track of?
Nope.
Okay.
It'd probably be people at APRO because that's where he was working at the time. In addition to other people he knew, I guess. And it wasn't like, you keep track of these people and tell us where they're going and what they had for dinner and how we can blackmail them. No. As far as I know, it was, what are they talking about what, around which bases, what do the things look like, who is talking to those people. It's just more like, who is trying to get through the UFO community to find out about our defenses and our defense projects. I
think that is a very smart thing. I mean, seriously, it's been interesting to me with some of the things that I've gone through to see people coming out of the woodwork and trying to approach me about specific things. It is strange. I think you do get too close to something, or stuff like that, and then all sorts of people come out of the woodwork. So
yeah, well, just because you're getting close to something and people are bothering you doesn't mean you're right about the thing that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Your theory may be completely off base, but the things that it's hooked into might be something that somebody doesn't like having any attention on. But that does not mean that your theory is correct. It just means somebody thinks you're looking at something they don't want you to look at.
Right. Well, in my case it is.
That's just
just kidding.
And I go back to the no mind thing. It's like, don't get emotionally involved in it, because you're going to start, if you get emotionally involved in whatever your theory is, you're not going to see any alternatives to it. And also you become very easy to manipulate.
Right.
So, and I don't like being easy to manipulate. So, not that I'm immune to such things, but I try to keep almost a You know, spies, people in intelligence and extremely rich people, they don't care about you. They don't care about what your life is like. They don't care about anything. All they care about is keeping their thing going.
Right.
That's what you have to keep in mind. They're not there rubbing their hands together going, we're going to screw over so-and-so. No, it's what's best for our interests. That's the only thing they're thinking.
Right.
And sometimes those are not your best interests. That's all. In fact,
Absolutely.
maybe a lot of the time they're not. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
But like I said, I will reiterate that I think there should be secrecy and national security secrecy.
Oh, absolutely.
It just goes. It's such a culture, and this is so not even original at all. But sometimes that spills over into things that aren't ethical. In fact, a lot of times it does, and it's been going on for so long in this country and others. Is that a lot of the people in that think that they're beside, above, or whatever the law, and that causes problems occasionally. Most of the time, I don't think they get caught, but sometimes they do, and people go, "What? What the hell did they think they were doing?" It's like, we're trying to protect this country, but in the midst of we're trying to protect this country, a lot of other things come in, like military contracts and inter-service rivalry and personal vendettas and, political agendas and religious agendas and all these things that should not be entering that conversation and being part of that process enter into it, because the government's made up of people and you can't help it. Not that it's right. It's just you can't really help it because people are going to put their spin on it.
Right. Absolutely. And I want to, because like I said, you've been through a lot and you've had some really interesting experiences, and you talk about some of those in It Defies Language, essays on UFOs and other weirdness. And there's a specific person that approached you that tried to give you specific information. And if you could share that story with us, I would be most appreciative, because I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I think I'll try not to go off script of what I said in the book too much, because what I put in there was not speculation, and anything past that might be more speculation. But in the mid-'90s, somebody approached me through a friend of mine, said he was from Naval Intelligence, and they wanted to release UFO information through me and my magazine. So, like, what are you going to say? Of course. We used to meet with the guy, and he would show us like pictures of things flying supposedly to Area 51, which I didn't know. I mean, some of them look like Photoshop jobs to me. And tell us about projects and people and things he'd worked on. He had tattoos of UFOs on his arms, and we were like, "What's that?" I asked him. He goes, "Oh, that was a recovery program." And I said, "You tattooed a UFO recovery program on your arm?" He said, "Yeah, it was a pretty important one. It was very good. It was very important for all the people in our unit." And I was
my God.
Yeah. He had a tattoo of like a Bob Lazar sport model saucer, I think, on his forearm or something. Or at least something that looked. Yeah, it kind of looked. It looked like one. If it was a fake one, it was done pretty well. But he started, handing me documents and a little book he'd written that was privately printed, that supposedly only 10 or 12 people were shown. I have no idea. But the whole thing is to make the person, me, the target, feel special. Mm-hmm. You are the person we've chosen to put this important information out. And, I'm 20-something years old. Somebody's telling me I'm special, and they're going to put information out through me. You're like, oh boy. So, and it was exciting stuff. It was fun talking to the guy. He was a very interesting person, wickedly smart, very sharp. Not the kind of person you think it's like, oh, some dumb military intelligence. It's an oxymoron. No, it isn't. There's some people that are frighteningly smart in intelligence. They have to be. But he met with me and my friends. A couple of them shows these pictures, and then he started. He released some documents to me. I can't remember what they had to do with. I think it was a memo from the CIA on being more open with the press. But when you read it between the lines, it's like, this is kind of this is not being more open. This is actually being less open by saying that you're going to be more open. That's all I remember about the specifics of it. It was like Task Force on Greater CIA Openness. And I published part of this in my magazine at the time. The magazine I was doing with a couple of friends, the zine in the 90s, and Excluded Middle. And I put my own interpretation of it on there. Like say, this could be taken with a grain of salt, but this and that. And after it came out, I got an angry phone call from him saying, "Why did you change what we told you?" I said, I just said what I thought about it. The guy said, "You do not do that. You publish it as we have given it to you." And I never published anything from them ever again because one, it scared me. And two, I thought, who are you to tell me what I can publish and what I can say in my own magazine? But we still remained friends, and he still gave me stuff, and we still got along great. He just wanted to, kind of slap me on the wrist for it. And eventually he stopped talking, and I heard that he died of a heart attack in 2000 or 1999. And he wasn't that old. He was like in his 30s, I think, 30s or 40s. Anyway, he said he was in naval intelligence. I have reason to believe he probably wasn't. But the thing is, he knew things that he shouldn't know. So he knew people in some intelligence service.
Like what?
Like, for example, he would say, in 2 weeks, so and such is going to happen in the Kosovo War. And he was right. He was right over and over again, 2 or 3 times. Because that was the conflict that was going on at the time. Like, I don't know if he said anything about the stealth fighter being captured, because that happened during the war. But he would tell us about things that would happen in this theater of war a week or 2 or more before they happened or were announced in the news. So he knew something. Or he told a friend of mine to go down to Burbank Airport, and he would see the stealth fighter take off from the Burbank Airport. And I think it had been revealed that we had a stealth fighter at the time, but nobody gives you flight schedules for the stealth fighter. And that's what was on Lockheed Skunk Works, was still at Burbank Airport. I used to actually work in the building that had been converted from their main building, which was kind of interesting. It wasn't Skunk Works anymore, but it was one of their buildings. No, I didn't work there. I went to the cafeteria there. Kaiser is located there now in Burbank. The entire building was covered in metal so that people couldn't eavesdrop. Yeah, and they'd actually cut holes in the metal and put windows in so the building would actually have light coming into it. But before that, the entire building was basically electromagnetically shielded and hardened so that you could not eavesdrop on any of the electronic communications inside the building, or for that matter, see what was going on. Anyway, he went down, and the guy said, "Go there at 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, and whatever, and stand at this end of the runway." This big stealth fighter flew over him. And how would somebody, just some doofus, know that? No, the guy had connections. So it was just interesting getting this weird recruitment from somebody and saying, you're special and you can tell our story and we're going to use you to release information. And since I didn't play ball the way they want me to play ball, that kind of petered out. Or maybe the guy picked wrong with picking me and my friends because they thought we didn't follow the program, and so he just got taken off our case. I don't know. Well, the only thing I learned from it is if they want to play the game again, I'm coming to the table and with my cards and my chips and play. I don't care if I lose, but I do care if I'm at the table. That's how I look at it. Yes, we will. I think we can, but it won't be through official channels.
But I mean, what would you like? What would if they came, knocking at your door and said, "Okay, here you go. Here's a seat at the table. Here's some chips." What would you want to do?
I'd stupidly go in and start playing. Knowing what I know now, I would still do it, but I would do it differently, I guess. I don't know. I mean, if I was in Billboard's position, I probably would have done what he did. I wouldn't have berated the UFO community for being doofuses like he did. Well, actually, he didn't do that. He just kind of said, "I'm doing this. If you don't think it's going on, then you're not paying attention." Another thing he said was, "What if this is solved next month? What are you people all going to do?
Yeah.
This is your whole deal. I mean, do you want a solution here or not?" And I think that idea still holds for a lot of people, because I don't know why the disclosure people are so hot on whatever, because as soon, and this has been said over and over, as soon as what they're saying is happens, nobody's going to listen to them anymore. Why would you listen to a ufologist?
Maybe be good.
Yeah, if a guy with a beard and a degree and a guy with some bars on his uniform and all that, and Fox and CNN and all these places are all saying nobody's going to listen to, nobody's going to listen to you and I or anybody anymore, because it's like, okay, those lunatics are probably right, but who cares now? Let's just go get it from the horse's mouth. And that they think that an answer is going to come from somewhere that okay, I will say this again. I've said it before on your show. Disclosure to me is like asking the one parent who always lies to you to not lie to you just this one time. And if they don't tell you what you want to hear, then then they're covering up and lying to you. And that's an unsolvable, the answer's already built in there. So if somebody tells you exactly what you want to hear, and you think that they're right, I mean, it just what if they're telling you what you want to hear and it's not true?
Which seems to be the case a lot.
Well, I don't know for sure. I don't know if there's aliens here and they have deals with us and the technology's been stolen. I have no idea if any of this stuff is going on.
You probably can venture a guess.
I'd say a hard, probably not. Not completely, but probably not. But is there something there that's not us that possibly has something that looks like technology to us? Yes, that'd be a hard, likely to me. Now, whether we know what it is, how to harness it, what's doing it, or anything, there might be some really smart people that are a lot closer to the solution than we are. But the government game and the ufology game and the press game around I don't think that has very much to do with, one, what's going on with the military and intelligence and defense, or two, with the phenomenon itself. Whatever anybody says publicly about the phenomenon, I think is way off from what it is.
Right.
Because it's self-referential to me. I mean, you're looking at something in your own metaphors. Right. If you can't get away from your own metaphors, and your illusion is that the metaphors are real, then you're lost. You're saying it's this thing, but it's standing 100 miles away from you, and you're seeing one photon of its image show up on your telescope, and you're saying that's the whole thing. That doesn't make sense to me. I think that's what's going on. I don't think there's any way for us to intellectually conceptualize it at this moment. I think some people probably could, but we haven't really heard from them. And yeah, there's something there. and it's something that's occasionally something that looks technological to us. But, aliens are here from other planets. The government has to tell us that. That seems, though, not unlikely. I mean, not likely. It's on the table, but I think it's an unlikely scenario.
Right. Well, and I want to talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to take a little break so you can go check on the parents and and all of your stuff. And so just we'll be back after the break. And this is my friend Greg Bishop, who was so nicely agreed to join me today on New Year's Day. He has written 2 books right here. He's written more than that. We'll talk a little bit about some of his other books, but I've got 2 sitting in front of me. It Defies Language, Essays on UFOs and Other Weirdness, and Project Beta. And both of them I would definitely recommend reading. They are great books. We're going to take a break, and we will be back in just a few short minutes. Welcome back to UFO Classified. I'm your host, Erica Lukes, and happy New Year, my friends. I'm so stoked it's a new year, and I wish all of you love, blessings, health, happiness, security, all of that good stuff. I know that all of us have been through the ringer in 2020, and some of you have lost a great deal personally, and my love and my prayers go out to each and every one of you. And so on that note, I'm going to bring back my friend who is just, I really feel lucky that Greg and I are friends. We've had some crazy times together, and Greg, I will never, obviously listening to Hervé Villachez while driving through the Hollywood Cemetery, I will never be able to erase that from my mind.
Oh, the Why Do People Have to Fight song?
Oh my God.
People don't know this. I collect and enjoy extremely strange music. Yes. I have a collection. I've up to now 4 hours of songs about UFOs and flying saucers that I've played on my show that's on Mondays, my music show. I've had 4 UFO music specials, full hours. That's 4 hours.
Cool. That is so cool. And yes, you do have incredibly strange taste. But I love it. I mean, seriously,
normal too. I mean, I like the Who and Led Zeppelin and the B-52s and whatever, Nirvana, country music. But yeah, I have a very special spot in my heart for extremely strange songs.
Well, and Hervé Villachez, I don't know if people ever actually knew that he sang. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love when you don't know that anybody sang, or if they did, that they couldn't and they shouldn't have. That really makes me happy when I hear things like that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, that moment is emboldened. I mean, it's just, in my
emblazoned?
mind. Emblazoned in my mind. Yeah, it's just emblazoned in my mind, and that was just so awesome. Just like us going to the baseball game. You took me to a baseball game, and on the way out we were listening to Wall of Voodoo, and I was singing at the top of my lungs, and it was just, I had so much fun. Gotta love Wall of Voodoo.
Yeah, me too. Yes. Yeah, everybody sees you gotta love whatever. I always say, no, you don't. But with them, you got.
Yeah, you do. You do. I could seriously just break into song right now, but I won't do that for anybody because oh my God, I love that. That was so much fun. And like I said, I always have a great time with you. You've been a good friend, and you've helped me with a lot of things through the years, and I appreciate that. You and Nick are my two people in the field that I just love to talk to.
Thank you. Well, you're mine too. All my best friends in this field that I've become friends with, and friends outside of the subject, when I see them, I try to specifically design things that when we go do something, it has nothing to do with UFO, anything. I was at the UFO Congress, the last live one in Arizona, the one that Alejandro Rojas puts on, and Michael Masters was there, the guy that with the time traveling alien hypothesis. Dr. Michael Masters, and I wanted to get to know every academic at that conference, and he was one of them. And then, so I kept trying to ask him out to lunch, and he was always like, "Oh, I already had lunch." Oh, and finally, it's like, is he just not like me or what? So finally, and he's a nice guy. So the final, day before the last day, I said, "Hey, Dr. Masters, is there any chance we could dinner or anything? I just want to talk to you. And he said, well, I already had dinner, but you want to go to a football game? And I said, I don't even like football, but okay. So I went there, and we didn't talk about UFOs at all. We just talked about what it was like in high school and college and what he was doing with his classes. And he explained football to me because I still don't really care or know anything about it. So we basically, drank beer, sat in the nosebleeds, and just made fun of the football game. But then when I went and did the interview, we had a wonderful interview. I mean, we had a lot of fun. And that's how I prefer to, talk to people in this subject. It's like, let's just drop the BS and the seriousness for a while and just be people and see what comes out of that. And you get the best interviews and the nicest, and you make the nicest friends and all that stuff. So, the being in this has helped me meet a lot of really cool, smart people. And who doesn't want those kind of people in your life? So.
Oh, I don't.
Okay, well then, bye. I don't either. Leave me alone.
I'm kidding. No, I think, but I will say though that you did take me on a little UFO adventure in LA. And that was...
Where did I take you? To the Aetherius Society.
Yes. And that was
they are near
cool.
and dear to me. I have a total soft spot for them because they're the most peaceful, they don't care about converting you to anything. If you're down with their Space Brother message, then great. If you're not, well, whatever, that's fine. Maybe you'll come around one day. And the guy that used to run the place, Reverend Alan Mosley, no relationship to Jim Mosley, in the 1980s and 90s, he's deceased now. It was the Aetherius Society, which was started by the British guy George King in Britain in the 1950s. When I first went over there, George King was still alive. And I didn't meet him per se, but I was in the room when he walked in, and one time he gave a sermon, and one time he came right in the middle of a prayer meeting and yelled at everybody, which was really funny.
But that was helpful.
Well, they have to charge the spiritual battery, which is like this box that sits on top of a tripod, and they pray at it to charge it up with prayer hours, which they then send up to the satellite, supposedly, that aliens put up there and keep harmony throughout the world. Which, what are you going to say against that? If you said anything against that, you'd just be the most horrible person. I don't think these crazy people should be calling for world peace. What? So I used to go down there just to visit.
It is
Mosley
beautiful.
come to the door. It is. He'd come to and it's been remodeled. It used to be a lot more humble than it is. I guess they got a little bit of money. He'd come to the door and he'd say, "Greg, how are you? Come on in." And not only would we talk about, the Aetherius Society and what they were doing, we'd talk about the latest UFO sightings and rumors, and because he was into it, because it's a UFO religion. So why aren't they? Of course they're into UFOs. So he read my magazine with interest and would ask me about the articles in it. It's like, "Oh, did you hear that sighting over near whatever this week?" And we'd go, and it was really fun because the guy was he was promoting religion of the Space Brothers, but part of that was he kept up on all the UFO news. So I used to go over there and just sit down and have tea with him and talk. It was a lot of fun, and I was really sad when he passed away. But I still love those people, which is why when people come into town that I know are into the subject, I try to drag them over there. And they're always very nice.
Well, I had a great time there. It was beautiful, and you're right. We sat around the fire pit and talked to the fellow there, and it was a very lovely, pleasant, interesting conversation. So, yeah, that was really fun.
And
like
they
I said.
don't care if you don't believe them. They could not give less of a crap if you believe them. If you do, welcome, we love you. And if you don't, well, maybe see you around some other day. They're so just that if there has to be a religion anywhere, that's my kind of religion. You believe us, fine. If you don't, at least don't be mean.
Right. Well, and it was fun. We have had some great adventures together, and I was just thinking about, taking you to the secondhand bookstore here that I love, and then up to see the mark of the grave. There's a grave in the Salt Lake City Cemetery, And the grave is this woman, Lily. Do you remember her last name?
Oh man, now you really put me on the spot.
I know.
I just looked it up.
It's quite renowned. But it is on her grave. It said that she died at the hands of the beast.
Yeah, victim of the beast, 666.
Yeah. So we had to go. I had took Greg to see that, and that was interesting. And we've had some fun. Definitely interesting times.
Yeah, well. Lily Gray. June 6, 1881 to November 4th, 1950-something. She was 77. Victim of the Beast 666. Her husband Elmer blamed her death on bureaucrats in the government, particularly Democrats.
God, really?
Yeah, that's what it said. I just typed it into a search engine just to see what it said, just to see what the name was.
Oh my God.
But yeah, for a long time it was kind of a mystery till somebody looked it up and found out. I don't think it was Regan Lee, but somebody looked it up and found out that it was her husband was just a wacko, and he thought that her death was due to neglect through the healthcare system that the government set up, and that must be because the government is the Beast 666. So has nothing to do with Mr. Crowley or anything like that.
Well, you've just spoiled it for us now. Thank you.
Spoiled?
Yeah. I liked having my fantasy.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
I told you that when we were there.
You did?
Yeah, I thought I did. And you took us over to that nice Mormon sculpture garden, which my friend Rob and I were just aghast at how cool it was.
I know. And also, I mean, yeah, this is Gilgood Gardens. If all of you Google that, it is absolutely an amazing place. And I actually, my grandmother's bishop was the one who built it. And it is, look it up, because there is a huge, giant stone carving of the Sphinx with Joseph Smith's face. Yeah. It is a freaking trip. So look it up. Yeah, definitely. And if you come to town, I'll take you there. Bean. Again.
He looks like what's the name of the comedian? The guy that plays Mr. Bean. Yeah. That's what it looks like.
Yep.
Rowan Atkinson.
Yes,
he looks like Rowan Atkinson.
He's a great actor. He's awesome. So yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting places in Utah. I just love it. And there's so many interesting places where you live, and we'll have to go on more grand adventures, hopefully in this spring when, there's something. You can wear your plastic sheath and I can wear mine, and it'll be good.
Yeah. I am thinking of maybe planning to take a trip here when things quiet down and more people have the vaccine and all that, and get out on the road and just get out of here for a while, because I haven't left, like a lot of people, I haven't left town really since last March, actually. I haven't left the state, I don't think. No, I haven't. I've basically stayed around LA, which is apparently the most dangerous place in the world now because of virus, and San Diego, taking care of my parents occasionally.
Well, we'll hopefully get back to somewhat. I mean, it's never going to be normal again, but hopefully things will move into a better place for sure. But I wanted to, and I wrote down when I was rereading Itafai's language a few things that I wanted just to talk to you about. And Victor Martinez, can you tell me a little bit about him?
I'm trying to think what to say about him. Oh, shit. Hey, Erica?
Yeah.
My friend Richard apparently died.
Richard
Saraday.
Oh, my God. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wow.
Can't remember what I was talking about.
No. Do you need to go?
No, I don't need to go. I'll call his wife later.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. If you need to go.
No, I don't need to go. I'll call his wife and his family later after we're done.
I'm sorry.
He's the guy that introduced me to the naval intelligence guy we were talking about.
Wow. And how old was Richard?
I think 76 or so mid-70s.
That's too bad. I'm sorry. Dang it.
I can't remember which question I was answering.
You know what? I was just asking about Victor Martinez.
Oh, yeah. He was somebody that was contacted by somebody in the military or purporting to be, and he said that he was the start of the Serpo business from the mid-90s, I think the late 90s. He was I believe a substitute teacher in the LA school system, and somebody started sending him these messages about a exchange program between us and a alien planet called Serpo. I can't remember where it was, and there was I think like 6 aliens came here and 6 astronauts went to their planet, and there was a whole big story about it, and it was this guy would send out these email messages about it. I was on the list, so I would get these messages, and it turned into such a big story that there was a special on Art Bell about it once. And I think Strieber was there, Whitley, and who else was on that show? Strangely enough, Richard Doty was on that show. It's the only other time he's been on Coast to Coast besides when he was on with me for Project Beta. Or not with me. I mean, he was on the same show. He was in Albuquerque, but there was no way to really prove what was going on and why the story had come out and what it particularly meant. It basically looked like the end of Close Encounters, where they put some astronauts on the alien ship and they take off and go to wherever. Supposedly this had happened in the 70s, and I think 2 of the people had died on the planet, or one had stayed there, and the rest came back, and the aliens left here and went back to their planet. And there's I think that was a story that had been rumored for a while. And also, like I said, it was at basically the end of Close Encounters that happened. I started wondering, why would somebody be slipping this weird story out through a substitute English teacher from the LA City school system? I found out that, at least actually at the time, I think he told me that he was an English teacher, so he started correcting the English in the messages that he was getting from somebody called Anonymous or Request Anonymous. Sounds familiar, right? And they told whoever was giving to him told him, don't change these things. You republish them in your emails exactly as they've been sent to you. And he's like, but there's spelling errors and grammatical errors and punctuation errors. And they say, well, you stop correcting them or you're off. And I don't know what happened, because they stopped sending them to him and started sending them to who was that Australian guy? Bill Ryan.
Mm-hmm. From Project Camelot.
Yeah. And the only thing I could figure out later was that if somebody is giving you messages and they don't want you to change a letter of it or any of the punctuation or anything, one of the few reasons I could figure out for that is that there were messages in them. And I think, when you think about it in that way, if there are messages in them and you're on the mailing list and you're able to figure out what the message, decode the messages to whatever, meaning there might be in them, and that shows up in, communications traffic, you're able to locate people that are UFO people that supposedly UFO people that, one, are it's a UFO subject, but two, have the smarts and the wherewithal to figure out that there's actually a code in there. Or they know the code and they're just using that information. So what you do is you put some spurious message in code in those messages, and then you see who starts acting on it. And then you know who's reading and who's doing what, who's, like, let's have a story about this one computer program that we have that can figure out, satellite trajectories or something. I don't know. I just made that up. But, in a week or a month or whatever, you see somebody's figured out how to figure out satellite trajectories or says there's stuff going on with satellite trajectories. You know who's listening. You know what I mean? Yeah. You drop the die in pipe number 15 and it comes out, next week in pipe number, 82 on the other side of the mountain or whatever. So that there's a connection between those two pipes. So you can start trying to trace back what that connection might be. And furthermore, you can start sending out false information to screw with people and until they figure out that you're screwing with them and they stop, acting on the information. So I think that's what was going on. I don't know for sure, but it sounds like it to me.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for talking about that. And then I also wanted to ask you about Shiva Star.
I have no idea what that is. Did I write about that?
So you did, and I believe that was a project that they were working on.
Who?
The government.
In relationship to what? I'm sorry, I forgot, but people are kind of like, how can you not remember what you wrote? I said, can you remember everything you wrote?
Yeah, seriously, I can't remember 5 minutes ago. That was good. Let me see if I can find it in here because it caught me off. No, and I don't see it. Dang it. It was a project, I want to say it was almost there was something that might have been in relation to Benowitz, but I could be wrong. But I will find that out, and then we can talk about it, and then I'll get you back on because I read through it, and it was interesting to me, but there was only a short passage in the book. So we will figure that out.
Okay.
And
I'm still freaked out about poor Richard.
I know. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And
I've known him since '92.
So tell us about him.
He read my magazine, got in touch with one of the other editors. He said, probably you should talk to Greg. I went over to his house, and we talked for 2 or 3 hours, and since then we've been friends. And he was the guy that introduced me to the naval intelligence guy. We were going to write a book about him, but apparently that's not going to happen now. He wrote pieces on U.S. intelligence, the UFO subject that went in Excluded Middle in my magazine. And we just became good friends, and I'd go over there and we'd just hang out and watch movies and talk about stuff at his place up there near Woodland Hills in LA here. And I hadn't seen him in like probably 5 or 6 months. I communicated with him maybe a month ago.
It's too bad. I'm sorry again. Dang.
One of my best friends in this. I'm kind of stunned.
I know. I'm sorry. I wish I knew how to make you feel better. I wish I knew what to say. I mean...
Well, we'll keep talking, and I will deal with it later.
Oh, crap. So I did find out about Shiva Star. So it's a high-powered pulsed research device located at the Air Force Research Laboratory at Kirtland Air Force Base.
Did I actually call it that?
Yeah.
Huh. It probably was the laser that I can't remember who saw. Maybe it was Bill either saw or heard from somebody that it would go through like 3 or 4 feet of concrete,
yes.
Steel reinforced concrete.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep. Yep.
Well, it was an early version of a high-powered laser, and what they kept doing was trying to get them, and they finally did, get them installed on aircraft. The only problem is that they have to have really, really, really big aircraft to have enough capacitor power to store it, because lasers take up just so much power that ground-based lasers are the only ones that can really throw any power at anything. But if you get a series of capacitors, which are basically, batteries that store up a whole bunch of power that let go of it really fast. It's not really a battery, but it's a way of storing power for a short amount of time. You go up in you go up in one of these aircraft that's like, the size of a passenger plane. It's got, 10,000 pounds of capacitors and some kind of generator in it, maybe hooked up to the engines. And the engines just run, or whatever generator runs, and just charges the capacitors up until they have enough power to power this extremely high-powered laser for, 5 seconds or something. And then the capacitors all let it go at once, and it's got a little aiming mirror on the front of the aircraft that can. So basically, it's kind of a death ray, and you can disable, missiles and aircraft with it by puncturing their. And they've tested it. I mean, the last few years they've actually tested it, but I think it was abandoned as unviable because they couldn't get enough power or sustain it enough for long enough in a battle situation too. So I think they went back to using, maybe they put them on ships or ground based or whatever, but probably as missile defense basically, because the videos that I've seen online is that actually them shooting rockets out of the sky with these lasers.
Okay, thank you. And I've got another question for you in shifting the content about to Men in Black. And are you aware of any new Men in Black cases?
Not really. I mean, I think Men in Black now would more manifest as email in black, where somebody sends you threatening messages. And I don't think there's too much face-to-face contact with ufologists or people that are into this and any person that might be a man in black at this point. And by man in black, I mean somebody from the military that plays a part that intimidates witnesses or whatever. I don't know if that goes on anymore. I don't think the intimidation of witnesses, I haven't heard it. Or it used to be not commonplace, but you would hear about it. Now, unless I'm ignorant, which I may be, I really hear of the government intimidating anybody into silence about a UFO sighting.
I haven't heard about any Men in Black cases lately either, but I think, that was from what I'm gathering, that was simply just people, paid to intimidate people. So I don't know. Yeah,
or get artifacts from them, or get pictures from them, or whatever.
Right.
If they couldn't do it in a friendly way. Rex Heflin didn't have a Men in Black come to him. He just had somebody that came to him he was the guy from Santa Ana with the pictures of the thing that looked like a straw hat, mid-60s, early 60s. His pictures got taken by somebody that said they were from the United Nations, or I can't remember what it was. But sometime in the early 60s or 65, 66, when he took his picture, somebody came to his door saying that they're from the Air Force or something, maybe some other agency, and flashed a badge and said, "We need those Polaroids," because he took them on a Polaroid camera, like an instant Polaroid, black and white. They took the pictures from it, and he didn't get it back till sometime in the mid-1990s. And somebody called him on the phone and said, "Go check your mailbox." And he did, and there's nothing there. But then he went out a few minutes later, and his pictures that he hadn't seen in, over 30 years were sitting in there.
Yeah, that's such an interesting story. And it's been fun for me. As you know, I'm now the proud caretaker of the Andruffel files, and so she did extensive work with Heflin over the years, and I was
I saw her present that paper on it.
Wow, that must have been so cool.
Yeah, her and Bob Wood, and I can't remember who the other one was. But yeah, they did a presentation at the SSE on it, I believe, and I saw her talk about it.
That must have been. I'm so envious because I would have loved to have heard her talk. She had such a funny, just by listening to all the audio cassettes of her interviewing people that I have, just to listen to her voice. I mean, she just had such a fun personality. I really admire her a lot, and it's been neat for me to have the Heflin files and things and all the correspondence, and then to actually, I don't have the original photos, but I've held them in my hand, and I do have the best scan of them available in my possession, which is really cool. So when you get a chance to get up to Utah, we'll have a heyday going through those files.
Oh yeah, that'd be great, because they did a analysis of it and I actually presented it on the UFO Mystic site and said, hey, look what Ann Druffel and these people have done. And a troll, my personal troll, came along and said it proves nothing, and there's, it was proven in the 1960s that these pictures were faked. And I said, well, how do you answer all the stuff they've done with the reanalysis? And he said it was, I think he said it was reanalysis of stuff that was faulty in the first place. Like, yeah, but they went to the original, the absolute original source material. And yes, granted, Ann Druffel and who was the other person I mentioned that was involved? Bob Wood, and a couple other people that are involved in looking at that are extremely pro-UFO. It doesn't mean that their analysis is necessarily bad. I found it compelling. I thought it was it wasn't at the SSE. It was at the National UFO Conference, I believe, in Hollywood.
Okay.
Where Ann Druffel, I believe, gave that talk. And I hadn't written it off, but I hadn't thought about the case in a while, and I just thought it kind of breathed new life into it.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating case, and obviously very hotly contested, and there are people in both camps on that. But I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Ann did impeccable work trying to get to the bottom of it. And it is interesting that there's a taped conversation that I have where she was talking to Heflin, and in that conversation, I mean, there was nothing. I felt sincerity on both sides, and I will actually play that on one of my upcoming shows because I think it is really, really interesting and very telling. I mean, I did not, and I could be wrong, but my interpretation, my impression was that he was just a very genuine guy, and he said there, he's like, well, Ann, you do what you want. I gave you those photos. They're in your care now, and it was just a very interesting exchange. Like I said, I felt very sincere exchange. So
yeah,
it's always interesting. And then I want to get back to Benowitz because I have a person in chat, Steve Long, who wanted me to ask you, there have been multiple causes of death with regard to and reported for Paul Benowitz, including suicide. Are you aware of the true circumstances of his death?
No, actually, not the true circumstances. I mean, I heard nothing about suicide or anything like that. I mean, he died from basically smoking too much. I think he died from lung cancer or some sort of cancer. 2 weeks before I went out there to actually work on the book for the first time in Albuquerque. So I missed him by a couple of... he wouldn't have talked to me anyway. His family would have let him out there. Or, well, I don't know. He's got his own... He has his own mind, but I think he was too far gone by that point to even would have been able to talk to me. But meaning not far gone like crazy, but far gone like extremely old.
Interesting. And so has anyone ever talked to his children?
I did, but they didn't want to talk to me.
So that was just... You didn't get anything from that?
No, his son kicked me out of his office.
Wow.
When I told what I was doing. I came in, found the secretary, just walked in unannounced and said I wanted to talk to, I think it was, what was his son's name? I can't remember. Anyway, I asked for his son. His son came up and said, hey, what do you need? And I said, can I talk to you about a book project I'm working on? He said, yeah, sure. And he like took me into took me to the conference room of Thunder Scientific, sat me down, and I said, I've been assigned to write a book on your father and what happened to him in the 80s. And as soon as I got that sentence out of my mouth, he said, absolutely not. We don't want to have anything to do with it. Please leave.
Wow.
I said, well, it's going to be written anyway because I'm on contract. And I want at least, he said, nope, absolutely not. I said, well, I'll send you a copy when it's done. And I don't even think he said thank you or anything. He just wanted me to leave. And at that point, I didn't want to write the book because I felt like I was violating their privacy.
Who assigned you to write the book?
Patrick Huige from Anomalous Books and Simon & Schuster.
Well, it's an exceptional book. It really is. I've learned a lot from it, and I think it is really kind of it's an important story for people that are getting into this subject to really understand the lengths at which people will go to keep secrets or to create landmines. And that's why, when I think of Area 51 and some of the crap that's come out, from in that regard, it's like obviously there's just another big smokescreen there to cover something else up, but whatever. It is what it is. But it is definitely it's a cautionary tale for people. But
it is. I mean, you have to. Everything I hear about all this is colored by that now. I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's just the way I see things now. Whenever anything having to do with the government UFOs, it goes through my Project Beta lens, and fairly or not, that's just the way it ends up. So I'm always suspicious when somebody says I've got the real scoop for you, and I mean, I've told these people basically to their face I'm suspicious, and most of them say, yeah, well, we don't care. It's fine. You should be suspicious.
Do you view ufology as a cult?
I guess I view it more like a high school club with all the jealousies and all the factions and all the weird petty squabbles and alliances and all that any a human organization has. But the only problem with it is there's no ultimate truth to appeal to with it. The only ultimate truth on it is there's something going on. It's not really much to go on.
For me, it does now that I'm kind of stepping back and looking at the subject and the field and things, I see it's very easy for people to come into this and achieve, this cult-like, guru status, and people blindly follow them like a new religion. And I find that so just really fascinating.
It is. With something where you cannot prove the ultimate reality of something, it's really easy to have that. I mean, it's easy to do it without that, for normal things. But for something that's ultimately unprovable, at least right now, it's really easy for people to put any imprint they want on it and claim that they have, the answer. Anytime anybody tells me they know what UFOs are and they have the answer, I'll listen to them out of a sense of amusement, but when people I know or meet or friends of mine say, I think this person has the right answer, I said, really? Ask them, these 15 questions, because whatever theory they have, it doesn't answer everything. It just never will. Until we change our way of looking at how we look at reality and how we look at how things are, how the reality of something is determined, and how we figure out how something
works and interfaces with our consciousness, because I think that's where physics is heading, and has been for a long time, and ufology ignores it. Ufology is still stuck in 19th century or Aristotelian classical physics, and new forms of physics and theory have left it way in the background. And people that are into this should be reading up on physics, and they should be reading up on information theory, and they should be reading up on Zen Buddhism and all kinds of things that don't, or mythology and rites of death throughout the world. All these things, I think, that are related to it, but nobody pays attention to, or most people don't, because they're looking at the birdie, they're looking at they're looking at the duck puppet of extraterrestrials from other planets coming here in structured craft, and I think that's the most simplistic answer, and I don't like simplistic answers. Simplistic answers don't, for something this strange, I don't think is the right path. I think that the subject is so weird that we have to be weird in the way we think about it. I sell a T-shirt that says "Mimic the obliqueness of the subject," and I really mean it. You can't meet something head on that is not a head on phenomenon.
So is it a mistake for people to turn to some of these, the higher ups, the talking heads in the subject for answers? What are your thoughts on?
No.
No.
I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to believe them and not question them. It's a nice starting point.
Well, I personally, when you turn to people like Corey Good and things like that, I think that's a problem. Whatever happened?
Yeah, well,
I've not heard anything from him.
It is a problem. I think the guy's absolutely useless for UFO subject, but I don't know what happened to him. I haven't heard about him for a while.
Yeah, I think he kind of disappeared.
The other thing, I've been talking to friends recently. They're like, you see people that are going to clean up the field, or we got to take care of this, or we got to, this is untrustworthy, and how are we going to get any respectability? It's like, that is a losing battle. You can't whack-a-mole ufology, because you whack the mole down and two others come up.
Well, I'm whacking all the moles down. That's my goal.
Yeah, well, you're never going to be able to do it, Erica. I think I can almost promise you that. Because the subject is not in its essence is not respectable, and it doesn't want to be. I was talking to Shannon Taggart the other day, who wrote or did that book on spiritualism, on seances. It's called Seance, and we were talking about paranormal research, specifically parapsychology, and all the weirdness associated with it, all the charlatans and all the hoaxing and all the, all the non-respectable things that go on in it. And I was like, that's just like ufology. And she was describing this to me. She's saying, it seems like, this is kind of a part of it. You can't really get away from it. And I said, you know what it is in ufology? The minute you try to put it in a corral, when you try to run up to whatever the subject is, whatever's causing it, it runs away from you. Meaning, I've got a lasso that says ETH on it, and I'm going to lasso that I'm going to lasso it, and it just laughs and runs away from you. But if you just sit quietly and wait for it to come to you, I think it'll show you things that you would not normally have seen if you were chasing it with a label. And that the weirdness and the hoaxing and the absurdity and the charlatanism and all that is built into it. It's an integral part of it. It's part of the show, and you have to accept that. You don't have to accept the people that do it, because some of them are complete wackos, but you have to accept that that's part of it. It's always going to be part of it. And any attempt to clean it up is just it's 5 more things will appear that are like 10 times wackier than what you tried to get rid of. So I think that's a losing game, trying to make things respectable. I think the ultimate thing is that people have to find the answers for themselves, individually, subjectively,
right.
And that's unfortunate because that's not how we deal with things now. But I think that's what UFOs are showing us. The world is way more subjective than you want it to be.
When you and I, talked about this at great length, a few nights ago, and I mean, I think for me, and that's something I always try to stress, it's like, okay, so you have this profound experience. For me, because I've had experiences with things I don't understand, and for me, the second I looked outward or looked to a group or a community to try to help me understand what it was that I was experiencing, that's when it was like this power, my personal power, was taken away. And so for me, I will hold my sightings and things, my experiences close to my vest. I don't know what they are. Will I find answers someday? Maybe. But I think that is the advice that I would give people that have experiences. It's like you can't turn to somebody else to describe something like that to you. It's too personal. You know?
Yeah. You can share an experience, but don't look for somebody to agree with you, to believe you totally. Even somebody that's had this, like, the only people that know the truth of what somebody that has cited something, if you've cited something, the only other person that knows the truth of that is somebody else that has had an experience with that similar thing. And it's not going to be the same thing, but when you start talking about it, you are talking the same language subconsciously because that sighting, that experience has changed you on a basic level in a way that somebody that hasn't had the experience does not know and cannot know.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's not scientific. That's just us. And I think that's a really important integral part of it that people don't want to acknowledge because of the worship of materialistic science. And I'm not putting down materialistic science, but for ufology, probably not a good thing to base everything on.
Absolutely. And I've got to just read this. I was just bugging Nick earlier today, our friend, Nick Redfern, Mr. Paul McCartney lover.
Yes.
I just said, hey, give us a little quote for what you thought about 2020 in ufology. And this is his quote. He just said this. He said, for the faith-driven people in ufology who think aliens will come and save us when things get really bad for us, the events of 2020 show they don't give a damn. There you have that.
Yes.
The words of Nick Redfern.
No, Nick, it just wasn't bad enough. You don't understand.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'm sure that's going to come out as well. Yeah, but of course, there's always a yeah. But I will let you go, and I will let you make your phone call. You were so kind to stay on the show and to talk when you've just learned about the passing of your friend. So thank you, and I will be thinking of you, and I'm here if you need me. So if you need to talk, you've got my number.
All right, Erica, thank you. And thank you for letting me blab on and on again.
Well, I like your blabbing. You have great things to say, and I'm sure I'll think of a million more things, so you'll just have to keep coming on and on and on. So there you go.
Okay.
So you have a wonderful night. Anyway, that came out completely wrong. You know what I mean. I love you. I'll be thinking of you, and try to have a nice time with your family. So
I will.
Hey, all right. I will talk to you soon, and I want to just thank everybody out there for listening and supporting UFO Classified. You can do one thing for sure, which is get up there if you're listening to this in Spreaker and hit the follow button, hit the like, get the word out, and then if you are kind enough to support the show, you can go to UFOclassified.com to become a Patreon, and all of that is very, very helpful to me to keep the show on the air. It does take a bit more money than I would ever expect, and I try to, well, you know that I do good work, and I bring on the best people that I feel can help you learn while we're all going through this learning process. It's a trip. I love it, but thank you so much to all of my friends. Thank you, Greg. Thank you to Mario, Northern UFOs, and all of the people out there. I love you guys. You're the reason I'm here. And I feel like even though I've not met most of you, you are friends to me. And when you grieve, I grieve for you. We've been through a lot. And so God bless you. Let's have a wonderful 2021. Stay safe. And then we will catch you next week. Take care, guys. Good night.
So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it can be used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is. You just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So what are you going to do with it? Who are you giving all this to?
It just really struck me about how the common thread seemed to be deception, but deception of human nature. So that's what I started thinking, who would these folks be? I mean, then I started thinking about the intelligence agencies, what role they could play, and what would be their motivations for getting involved in ufology.
I'm not saying that because the gimbal is not a rotating flying saucer, that means that all the UFOs are false. Not at all. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this one case, these individual cases, and seeing if there's an explanation for those. So try to, if I could ask people out there listening, don't think that I'm trying to attack your entire beliefs about these things.
Nice to be in orbit.